Well, good day, viewers. Today we've got an interesting case here. It's a Buick Verano. I'm not sure the year yet, like a 14 or a 15, and occasionally it cuts out. Check engine light will flash on. Sometimes it'll restart. Sometimes it won't crank. It was dropped off yesterday, and I noticed that occasionally it won't crank. Don't see a check engine light. Oh yeah, there it is over by the speedometer. Or attack, sorry. So I did not release the key from the crank position. It cranked, stopped cranking, cranked again. Seems like intermittent power or something. ABS, wrench light, service power steering message. Well, I'm gonna do a network scan. He said occasionally a scan tool won't talk to the ECM as well. So I'm leaning towards a power supply problem to the ECM. Verano diagnosis. Sorry for the glare, I'm outside. Let's do a smart scan. Six codes in the ECM. I'll pick up when we get to the end of this scan. So let's go into the report and see what we've got. Engine control computer has oxygen sensor code, circuit sensor, heated oxygen sensor performance, immobilizer key incorrect. Well, that would explain the no crank. Lost communication with electronic brake control module. Fuel pump control module doesn't have any codes. Transmission control module has lost communication with electronic brake control module. Parking brake control module. System disabled and lost communication with EBCM. Lost communication with engine control. Multi-axis acceleration sensor module. Lost communication with EBCM. Power steering control module. Lost communication with brake control. Lost communication with engine control. Sounds like we might have a network issue. Body control module. Tail lamp circuit. License lamp circuit. Lost communication with engine and EBCM. Starting to see a pattern here. But he mentioned a code in the ECM related to internal ECM failure. I don't see that one. Oxygen sensor heater circuits. That's sensor 2, sensor 1, sensor 2, sensor 2. Well, I'm gonna save this report. And then I'm going to do a network code clear. I got to do that key on engine off. Because who knows what's been going on with this vehicle. Code didn't clear in that module. It's windy as hell outside. Let's see what we got in the lost communication. Electronic brake control module. Lost communication with electronic brake control module. And lost communication with electronic brake control module. Parking brake control. So there could be a problem with the high-speed CAN bus. We need to look at the topology map. Like, this is a representation of the topology map, but it's not a true representation. In other words, the ECM might be at the end of the circuit. The BCM might be at the other end of the circuit. The modules that are complaining, and we got no communication with the EBCM. I'm pretty sure it's going to have electronic brake controls. Vehicle stability system not equipped. It has it. Equipped. No communication. Let's see what it does now. Cycle the key off, back on. Well, I'm going to bring this in the shop. There's power steering, service power steering. And look at a topology map. So I'm looking at Mitchell versions of the wiring diagrams for the computer data lines. And what's of concern here is pin 6 and 14 at the DLC. As you can see, it goes from the DLC 6 and 14, it goes into the body control module. And then it comes out of the body control module at circuit 2501 and 2500. 2500 for the plus wire and 2501 for the low wire. Then it goes on to the next page on location 3 and 4. So let's look at the next page, location 3 and 4. Now this vehicle has OnStar, so it goes from the BCM to the OnStar module, which is called the telematics communication module. And then it goes out of the telematics communication module on these two circuits here and into the power steering control module, which we have communication with. Out of the power steering control module, it goes into the electronic brake control module. So the electronic brake control module has no communication, but it is in series with the circuit. So it goes in and out of the EBCM and to the transmission control module, and then to the ECM. The ECM is at the end of the network. And I'm sure it's got a terminating resistor in it. So there's a couple different ways we could approach this. We could lab scope the CAN bus, or we could measure terminating resistance, all of which is a good thing to do. But we know we have no communication with the EBCM, so I think we're going to explore the powers and grounds to the EBCM and see why we've got no communication with it. It could be compromising the network. A quick test would be to disconnect this connector and jumper to bypass the EBCM and see if that eliminates all the problems. But this EBCM could easily be breaking down and compromising communication between the BCM and the ECM. And that would account for all of the codes related to loss of communication with the EBCM. So we're going to check powers and check fuses that feeds power to the EBCM, electronic brake control module, first. I'm going to print these diagrams. So here's a look at the ABS control module. It has two battery power wires, one from a 60 amp fuse, fuse 30, and one from a 30 amp fuse, fuse 21. And then it has this serial data communication enable circuit, which I'm pretty sure comes from the BCM, and it's basically a wake-up signal, like a 12-volt power key switch on, because there's no ignition input to this thing. And then there's one ground at G110, left rear of engine compartment, which is highly suspect. So we're going to check these maxi fuses first of all, and do a visual inspection under the hood of this thing. So fuse 30 is this one. No, that's fuse 21. 30 amp fuse. And fuse 30 is 60 amps. They're both good. I took them out and tested for continuity through them. And I looked at these cables and connections and I wiggled it. There's a ground here, but that ABCM lives underneath this coolant reservoir. Looks like I gotta take the battery out to get the coolant reservoir out of the way. It was idling here and it just stalled dead. And I wasn't touching anything. So to get the overflow bottle out of there, I had to pinch off the hoses and take the clamps off. And there's a little clip here that goes right on top, and then the washer bottle slides forward, but it hits the battery, so I had to disconnect the battery and battery tray, slide the shield out of the way, that metal shield in the front. So we're going to clean up all these connections because we need to get access to this connector back here. Oh boy, that's going to be nasty if I have to change that EBCM because it's bolted to the bottom. Why couldn't it be bolted on top? Oh well, let's reconnect the battery. So I decided while I had the battery disconnected to put the breakout box in there across pin 6 and 14, and there's a 63 ohms. So the network is definitely not open. Spec is 60 plus or minus 2, so 63 is pretty close. That's weird. The textbook normal looking. The green trace is CAN H and the yellow trace is CAN L. And they're biased at about 2.5 volts, a mirror image of each other. But it's not acting up now. I'm going to wiggle the connections. Do you hear that? It just cut out momentarily and the network activity looked normal. Well, we're going to bypass that ABS module. So I've got the ABS module unplugged and the connections look pristine. There's no sign of moisture or oxidation in them. I know it's not going to start when I try to crank it. It's not going to respond at all. We still got network activity. Turning the key on now. And like I said, no response. Well, we're going to load test those circuits at this module. I suspect the large pins are the power pins. There's 3 large pins here, 2 at this end and 1 at this end. So 1 is a ground, 2 are the battery powers. But I'm concerned about that serial data wake-up signal, so I'm going to figure out which wire that is. I got to get a pin out of this connector. So these 2 pins down here at this end are power, and this one is ground, just based on the size. I got a 3057 bulb here with both filaments lighting up, so that's about 3 amps. So that's okay. At least I think it is anyways. And normally power or ground to this thing would cause a loss of communication with it, but it shouldn't affect the communication. So one of these wires is that serial data wake-up wire, so I have to determine which one it is. So pin 8 is the serial data wake-up signal. It's on the same row as the pin 13, which is the ground. So 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. And 9, 10, 11, and 12 are CAN high and low. Now I've got a 194 bulb installed across that pin, and I've got the ignition key on, and I fully expected this to light up, and it doesn't. And I got a ground,
Let me double check my pin. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Let's see if we have any voltage on that wire. My understanding is that's a wake-up signal from the BCM to the EBCM. That would make sense if that wire is compromised. So I'm going to get a voltmeter out here now. Normally, I've checked that at full-size truck ABS modules. So yellow on pin 8 and black on the ground. And I've got 11 volts there. But normally that lights a 194 bulb. 11.34 volts there. And what do I have at the battery right now? $11.98. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 11.3 volts. And these should be the CAN bus signals. They should be around 2.5 volts. 2.4, 2.3, 2.3, so this one here is I'm going to double check the schematic to see where that actually comes from. I just realized you couldn't see the voltmeter. So the serial data communication enable circuit is circuit 5986. And on this BCM diagram, it says C data communications 59, and it's labeled ignition. And like I said, on full-size trucks, that circuit's always lit a 194 bulb. I suppose we could go right to X4 of the BCM and see if we can have a good circuit there, but I'm going to see if there's another connector in between those two places. So that's circuit 1586. Comes from pin 23 at connector 4 of the BCM, and it goes to a splice, unfortunately. And it feeds the fuel pump control module, the power steering control module, the telematics communication interface control module, the parking brake control module, and the electronic brake control module. So unfortunately, there is nothing convenient we can get to. We could test it at the power steering control module and see if it lights a test light down there. But I was under the impression that that should handle about 100 milliamps to 150 milliamps of current. I could be wrong though. One of these modules is convenient to get to besides the electronic brake control module. I'm going to do a little research. So I've got the meter set up reading the voltage. I put a clean battery charger on it, set it at 13.5. That's why it's at 12.97. If I touch a test light on that terminal while I'm reading the voltage, watch what happens. It drops right down to 0 instantly. And I'm pretty sure that that circuit is supposed to support a couple of hundred milliamps anyways. Now looking at the diagram, it comes from the BCM and it goes to this splice, and I wondered where this splice 314 is. Well, 314 is under the driver's sill plate, believe it or not. I tried to print it off, but it's... So that's a very suspicious area. None of these modules are convenient to get to. Now there's X121, a connector on the way to the power steering control module. If I can find that connector, I could test that circuit there. Either that or pull that sill plate up. This will come back up after a few minutes. Wonder if I cycle the key if it comes back. I got the key in the run position. I turned the key off and back on again. And it came back again. I'm gonna pop that sill plate off because I got a bad feeling. That's a nasty spot. I don't think this car's been in an accident from what I can see. It's got some hail damage, but I don't see any kind of sign of body repairs. Well, there's no signs of water or moisture. Not that that harness can't be compromised, but I'm gonna bring the voltmeter in here so I can watch it and wiggle these connections, or wiggle this harness. And I can't really wiggle it. I think I'm gonna find another spot to test it and confirm that it lights a light bulb. So connector 121 is underneath the battery tray, and I figured I'd go to the power steering system, but there's no access to that control module. It's behind that heat shield. So I'm gonna go for the fuel pump control module. It's in the trunk. So here is the location of the fuel pump control module, K27. It says right rear corner of the trunk area. That's item number 5. So that should be easier to get to than the power steering control module, and we gotta get a connector view of that. It's under K. K27, fuel pump control module, connector view. So we'll print this off. So interestingly, it's the same pin, pin 8, that's the serial data wake-up signal. I got 12.98 volts on it, but as soon as I put a load on it of any kind, as you can see, it drops to 0.3, 0.03. Now, I've tested that serial data wake-up signal at trailer brake control modules and EBCMs on full-size trucks, and it's always lit a 194 bulb. But I'm not 100% certain it's supposed to, so we could be chasing a ghost here. Pin 1 is battery power, and pin 25 is ground, the other end. Ah, brother. More reading. So connector X4 is the black connector, and it's pin 23, and it's a white blue wire at the BCM under the passenger side of the dash. So I'm going to try to back pin that wire. Just happens to be the one on the outside of 12.9 volts. Let's see if it'll support a load here. So if I put a load across it, right here, as same as at the other modules, it drops to 0. It doesn't light a test light. But it comes back right away. Notice how it comes back right away? Whereas the other one didn't come back right away. I'm going to repeat that at the EBCM. So I'm measuring the voltage there now, and you can see it's 0.035. I'm going to cycle the key on and off. Off, on. And I got 13 volts. But now when I put a load on it with the test light, like I did right at the BCM, and it doesn't come back right away. So I'm going to disconnect that connector and try load testing that wire, see if it'll pass current. I'm almost but I could be wrong about it lighting this LED or this 194 bulb on this model, but that's strange that you get a different result. I'm going to do that again. So I got a fused jumper wire from the battery positive here to pin 23 at connector X4, and I'm backfeeding power. I got the BCM unplugged. I got 13.68 volts, and if I plug in my test light, it drops to 13.5. So that wire is fine. All this work for nothing probably. It doesn't work the same as the full-size trucks from what I can tell now. So I'm doing what I should have done the first time. What I said I was going to do was bypass the CAN bus through the EBCM. So jump pin 9 to 10 and 11 to 12. So I've got two solid core 20 thou wires that I put in there. So the car should start now without the ABS module in it. So I'll see if it'll start. And we should have a lack of communication with the ABS module, obviously. Well, I think what I'm going to do is see if it'll act up while it's running. Gotta put the coolant reservoir back in it. I think I'm going to go to the salvage yard and get a used EBCM and just plug it in there and see if it'll communicate. I still can't explain why that serial data wake up doesn't support a 194 bulb like it did on the full-size trucks. I'll let it run for a while and see what happens. So it's been running for 10 minutes and it hasn't skipped a beat, whereas before it was cutting out, stalling when it was just sitting there idling. I suspect we got loss of communication with the EBCM codes. Stands to reason it's not in there. Lost communication with the EBCM. Lost communication with the EBCM. System disabled. Lost communication with the EBCM. Lost communication. And body. Driver's window not calibrated because I had the battery disconnected. And license plate lamp. And lost communication with the ECM. And lost communication with the brake control module. Let's clear the codes out of the BCM and see what comes back. Read fault code again. It's interesting, we got a loss of communication with the ECM, passed and failed. Mind you, it maybe didn't clear because I have it running. I'll try it key on, engine off. We'll try it with the key on, not running. Okay. Well, I'm not worried about the license plate light or the driver's door window calibration. So I think the next I'm leaning towards a failed EBCM, and it's compromising the network and causing the engine to cut out and all kinds of warning lights to come on. But I think to be 100% certain, I'm going to get a used one and plug it in and see if I have communication. I still don't understand why that serial data enable signal doesn't support a small trouble light, small test light, when it did on the full-size trucks. But hey, live and learn.